স্টার্ট করব নাকি? Hello everyone, hope you are fine in the my dear students. Hope you are fine in the period of Corona crisis. We everybody pray for each other to overcome this period. And I will now continue about the session of pyloric stenosis, both the presentation and the theory classes. We know that what your mind does not know and eyes cannot see. So, everybody knows about the details of the theory, then you discuss about the discussion. Now, I start with the case presentation of gastric outlet obstruction, probably due to pyloric stenosis. And yesterday class, I will also discuss about the carcinoma stomach. Today I would like to present about the pyloric stenosis. Now as we discussed previously, the particulars of the patient when we go through the patient and as the case, Mr. Yusuf Ali, 39 years, male sex, married, occupation farmer, and Noapara, Satkania, Chittagong. His presenting complaints are recurrent pain in the upper abdomen for 5 years, recurrent vomiting for 6 months, and weight loss for same duration. So this chief complaint he presented to me or presented to you during the case examination. Again, in previous class, I also tell you that after chief complaint, we also take the history of present illness, history of past illness, personal history, socioeconomic history, family history, immunization history, menstrual history, transfusion history, and other history we will take. And for the undergraduate student, we will write it in the khata, and for the postgraduate student, we will take the all history and they also remember during the presentation of the case. In general examination, again same appearance, body build, cooperation, decubitus. These are the same as all the case examination procedure. Then we will observe about the anemia, dehydration. Here the anemia absent, jaundice absent, cyanosis absent, mildly dehydrated, and pulse, blood pressure, temperature, respiration, heart rate, neck bend, peripheral lymph node, hernial orifice, everything we'll examine in the general examination. In abdominal examination, so at first in the abdominal examination, we inspect the patient. The exposure is very important. It is from the mid chest up to the pubic symphysis, and you expose in such a way that everything is observed by you. You just sit at the side of the patient's bed and observe keenly to the patient's whole abdomen. In inspection, we see the abdomen is a scaphoid in shape, umbilicus is centrally placed, inverted, vertical slit, hair distribution is normal, no visible scar mark, but visible peristalsis is present. In case of pyloric stenosis or the gastric outlet obstruction, the visible peristalsis is very important sign of the gastric outlet obstruction. In palpation, then there is a superficial and deep palpation. We want to see temperature, mild tenderness present in the epigastrium. Very important is things the Sakashana splash is present. So in the pyloric stenosis, succussion splash is present. No palpable mass found, and the all organ such as liver, spleen, kidney, all are not palpable. This is the again I show you the succussion splash method. Previously I have shown you into the previous class by pressing the hip joint and by pressing to the upper chest. So it is very important. And one thing here mentioned, the succussion splash usually seen in the 4 hours after taking the food. That's why we ask the patient when he take the food, if it is within the 4 hours, so it is not a diagnostic sign, because a normal person may be the succussion splash positive and within 4 hour time, and the 4 hour time is the gastric emptying period. That's why the succussion splash is important to see after the 4 hours. In percussion, we see the it is tympanic and shifting dullness and fluid feel is absent. Auscultation, bowel sound present, and digital rectal examination and other systemic examination reveals no abnormality. So after taking all of the history, then we go for saline feature. So I studied the saline feature of this patient. If you started and then the examiner tell about the what is your saline feature. So start Mr. Yusuf Ali, 39 years age, farmer, hailing from Shatkania, presented to me with the complaints of recurrent pain in the upper abdomen for 5 years, recurrent vomiting for 6 months, and weight loss for same duration. So, according to the patient statement of the patient, his presenting complaint started 5 years back. Then he developed pain in upper abdomen, which is burning in nature, intermittent or continuous occurs in empty stomach, being relieved by taking food and omeprazole. It is non-radiating and not shifted to the other side. It was not associated with the fever, chills and rigor. He experienced occasional attack of nausea and vomiting for several months. But during the last 6 months, he developed recurrent vomiting, which is induced, projectile, profuse in amount, foul smelling, and contain both digested and undigested food particles. And it occurs several times after taking the food. Patient is constipated for 3 months and has history of weight loss for same duration, which was about 1/3 of his previous normal body weight. He has history of peptic ulcer disease for the last 10 years. For this purpose, he was taken several drugs for several times, but he could not mention about the name of the drug. His bladder habit is normal. He has no history. In previous class already we discussed about the if you know the two things on chief complaint, presenting complaints, or clinical feature and examination will tell about the whole of the saline feature. That's why these things are as usual or every cases, whether it is positive, whether it is present or absent. So his bladder habit is normal. He has no history of blood transfusion and no history of any allergy to drug. He has no history of cough, chest pain, hemoptysis, jaundice, hematemesis, malaria, and bone pain. Patient is immunized and low socioeconomic group, and no member of his family suffering from this disease. Patient is non-smoker, non-alcoholic, non-diabetic, non-asthmatic. On general examination, patient is anxious, cooperative, average body weight and nutrition, not anemic, not icteric, not dehydrated, mildly dehydrated or not dehydrated. Pulse, blood pressure, temperature and respiration are within normal limit. Neck vein not engorged, neck gland not enlarged. No ascites, no edema. Hernial orifices are intact. All accessible peripheral lymph nodes are not palpable. On general examination, here I again mention that it starts from the you just see that start from the forehead. That means upper eyelid jaundice, then anemia, then dehydration, neck gland, neck pain, pulse, blood pressure, temperature, respiration, then abdomen ascites, hernial orifice, edema, and peripheral lymph node. So if you remember from head to toe, you just details describe in the general examination. On abdominal examination, usually on abdominal examination, usually the pyloric stenosis patient or gastric ulcer patient, the abdomen is a scaphoiding shape, no abdominal distension, visual peristalsis is present, and no scar mark. On abdominal examination, visual peristalsis is very important mark of the. It is from the left to right of the gastric outlet obstruction. On palpation, every things are normal except the succussion splash. So here the succussion splash present in all cases of pyloric stenosis, and digital rectal examination and other examination reveals no abnormality. So here I mentioned, so my provisional diagnosis, gastric outlet obstruction due to pyloric stenosis. My my differential diagnosis may be the carcinoma stomach or chronic gastric ulcer. So this up to the presentation. So if any patient comes to the recurrent vomiting, again I recapitulate, recurrent vomiting which is projectile, foul smelling, induced, and history of peptic ulcer disease, weight loss for some duration, then you think about the gastric outlet obstruction, whether it is benign or malignant. If it is benign, they have no epigastric lump or mass or hematopoiesis melena, etc. But patient may be cachectic due to loss of appetite. Here it is one of the differentiating point after vomiting. In case of pyloric stenosis, patient feels hunger. In case of carcinoma stomach, patient does not feel hunger. It is one of the clue of the differentiate the benign or malignant disease. So again, the examiner you ask your question, why you say it is a pyloric stenosis? So again, this is the answer. It is my case is the pyloric stenosis because my patient, Mr. Omuk, 35 years age, hailing from Sitakunda, presented to me with the projectile vomiting, abdominal fullness, long history of peptic ulcer disease. On examination, visual peristalsis present and succussion splash positive. That's why my diagnosis, it is a case of gastric outlet obstruction due to pyloric stenosis. Next, so what investigation you will suggest to confirm the diagnosis? My investigation of choice is the endoscopy of the upper GI tract. So, like as the carcinoma stoma, if any lesion for biopsy. So, what are the findings of endoscopy of the upper GI tract? Next question, may be possible next question. So, it is findings are this is the stenosed pyloric orifice. This is a stenosed, and there are the food particle, and scope could not pass beyond the duodenum. So, scope could not pass beyond the duodenum, hugely distended stomach, and residual food particle present in the stomach. So, these are the findings in GI tract, endoscopy of the upper GI tracts. So, in the next investigation is barium meal X-ray of the stomach. Same. So, the next investigation is the barium meal X-ray of the stomach. What are the findings of barium meal X-ray? The finding of barium meal X-ray is stomach is hugely distended. Here the stomach is hugely distended, low down in position. This is the stomach. Stomach is hugely distended, low down in position. Presence of multiple radionegative shadow in the stomach. Greater curvature reach up to the pelvis. no passage of contrast beyond the pylorus. So, in barium mill X-ray, these are the four findings you always mention. You remember always the barium mill X-ray. There are the stomach is dilated and the scope and the dye cannot pass beyond the duodenum. So, this is the findings of the barium mill X-ray. Next question possibility: what are the biochemical investigation you will suggest? In that case, biochemical investigations are maybe I do the complete blood count because to see the hemoglobin percentage ESR, then serum creatinine, serum electrolyte. These are because in the due to recurrent vomiting, patient develop recurrent dehydration and the renal failure maybe or renal output may be decreased. That's why creatinine may be increased in the late stage. And there are the electrolyte very important, the serum electrolyte, because there are the metabolic abnormality developed in the gastric outlet obstruction. Next, how will you manage this patient? Again, how will you manage this patient? We again described previous lecture that I will manage the patient by first I will counsel the patient, then preparation of the patient, and the next after preparation I will go for operative management. So very important is the counseling of the patient. I again yesterday I told about the how we counsel the patient. So the how we'll manage prepare the patient. Again the preparation is there are two parts. One is the patient preparation, another is the stomach preparation. In case of patient preparation, I will correct the metabolic and electrolyte abnormality by intravenous fluids. Rehydrated with intravenous isotonic saline with potassium supplementation or with double strength saline, calcium, potassium and magnesium. So fluid and electrolyte balance should be corrected and replacing the sodium chloride and water allows the kidney to correct the acid base abnormality. Following rehydration, it may become obvious the patient is also. Here it is remind that after rehydration, the anemia may be observed. That's why patient dehydration is very important and patient electrolyte abnormality correction and dehydration correction is important. In some cases, not in every case, some case may require the total parenteral support. Again, there is the stomach preparation. I told you that very important the stomach preparation as the work done here with the stomach, and there is a huge amount of fluid, huge amount of the digested undigested food particle in the stomach. So correction of the or clearance of the food particle from the stomach is very important. That's why all the residual food particles should be removed out and then stomach is washed with normal saline every 2 hour interval, and then after a clear fluid comes out, then you think that the stomach is prepared fully. It is about 3 days preparation, not in day before operation you prepare the stomach for the operation. So mind it, it is 3 days preparation to prepare the stomach. Then go for operation. What is the name of this operation? The operation name is we expose the or we go for the midline upper midline incision, then see the stomach and go for the bilateral truncal vagotomy and gastrojejunostomy. Bilateral truncal vagotomy and gastrostomy. It is better the bilateral truncal highly selective vagotomy than the bilateral truncal vagotomy. But somebody for the do the bilateral truncal vagotomy and the drainage fortune, that means gastrojejunostomy. There are the 5 names: retrocolic, retrogastric, isoperistaltic, short loop, no tension, gastrojejunostomy. Here I show you the stomach. This is the right vagus and this is the left vagus. The right vagus means the posterior vagus and left vagus means the anterior vagus. This is cut down at the just lower end of the stomach, and we do the in the greater curvature, the jejunum is taken in and do the gastrojejunostomy procedure. So this is the bilateral truncal vagotomy and the gastrojejunostomy procedure. So what are the type of gastrojejunostomy? There are the 5 types. The gastrojejunostomy is the 5 types. First one is the in relation to the colon, in relation to the anastomotic site with the gastric surface, in relation to the peristaltic movement of stomach with jejunum, in relation to the length of afferent loop, and in relation to the jejunal length from the duodenojejunal junction. These are the 5 tests. These 5 tests we have done in the gastrojejunostomy in benign cases. That means in relation to the colon it is anticolic retrocolic. In relation to the stomach surface it is antigastric retrogastric. In relation to the peristaltic movement it is isoperistaltic and retroperistaltic. In relation to the length of afferent loop it is short loop, long loop, and in relation to the length from DJ junction it is no tension and tension. For the memorization it is CAPAL, CAPAL, CAPAL. CAPAL means relation to the colon, anastomotic site, peristalsis and gastric surface and the length. That's why retrogastric, retrocolic, isoperistaltic, short loop, no tension gastrojejunostomy. This is the type of gastrojejunostomy. So in Viva, maybe for the postgraduate student, then what is the name of the gastrojejunostomy or what are the types of gastrojejunostomy? So if you remember the couple, you always tell about the type of the gastrojejunostomy. Surgical management previously I told you, and this is the highly selective vagotomy is better than the bilateral truncal vagotomy and gastrojejunostomy. So highly selective vagotomy is always preferred because the enteral part is supplied by the nerve supply jet, it will remain intact. That's why highly selective vagotomy is important for the very very effective for the benign gastric outlet obstruction. Now we go for theory discussion. Sometimes in theory, sometimes some examiner may told what is gastric outlet obstruction. So gastric outlet obstruction is not a single entity. It is clinical and pathophysiological consequence of any disease process that produces a mechanical impediment to gastric emptying. So it is not single, many procedures that obstruct the emptying of the stomach content. One is the pyloric stenosis, one is the carcinoma stomach, maybe pressure from outside, adult hypertrophic pyloric stenosis. In case of benign, it is infantile hypertrophic pyloric stenosis, maybe the carcinoma head of the pancreas, and there are many things and to produce the gastric outlet obstruction. That's why it is not a single entity. And pathophysiology of the pyloric stenosis. This is the one of the another question of why pyloric stenosis occurs in case of benign peptic ulcer disease. So in case of benign peptic ulcer disease, how pyloric stenosis produced? The answer is in the stomach. You see the stomach. This is the stomach, normal stomach. The peptic ulcer disease occurs here. In case of peptic ulcer, recurrent peptic ulcer disease, when peptic ulcer patient occurs duodenal ulcer, take the omeprazole or H2 blocker, then it heals again, comes into the peptic ulcer. Recurrent peptic ulcer disease produces the scarring and cicatrization of that part. This scarring and cicatrization repeatedly occurs and produces narrowing of the lumen and the obstruction of the pylorus. The obstruction of the pylorus gradually increases and the at the same time it produces the enormous dilatation of the stomach. In enormous dilatation of the stomach full of ingested food and gastric juice. And as the obstruction progressed, the patient presented with the vomiting. And vomiting is recurrent vomiting, which is persistent projectile in nature. So, in benign peptic ulcer disease, how the patient present to you? Clinical feature of the benign peptic ulcer disease. Clinical feature of the benign peptic ulcer disease. In clinical feature of benign peptic ulcer disease, gastric outlet obstruction from a duodenal ulcer or incomplete obstruction typically present with the symptoms of the following. Gastric retention, that means including the early satiety, bloating, epigastric fullness, indigestion, anorexia, nausea, vomiting, epigastric pain, and weight loss. Pain is severe, persistent, maybe, or the continuous. And nausea and vomiting are the cardinal symptoms of the gastric outlet obstruction. Now, very, very important, nausea and vomiting. So, in case of vomiting, what are the, sometimes we say in case of postgraduate or undergraduate student, what are the character of vomiting in the pyloric stenosis? So, the character of the vomiting, it is projectile, persistent, non-bilious, and contain the both undigested, foul smelling. This and the other features are the loss of periodicity. Very often it is possible to recognize food stuff taken several days previously. And patient loss weight, approximately patient loss of weight. It is very, very important due to patient did not take any food and did not take and there is a presence of vomiting. Frequently patient is malnourished and dehydrated and have a metabolic insufficiency. So, abdominal pain is not frequent and usually related to the underlying cause such as peptic ulcer disease or other things. One of the very, very important question, what are the metabolic effects or metabolic abnormality, or how the metabolic abnormality developed in benign gastric outlet obstruction? It is very, very important question in examination. That's why every student should be especially in the postgraduate student, very, very important, how metabolic abnormality developed in the pyloric stenosis or gastric outlet obstruction. So, first, what happened in the pyloric stenosis? Dehydration. Why? Due to vomiting. There is a repeated vomiting. That's why dehydration and electrolyte abnormalities. Increases the blood urea nitrogen creatinine are late feature of the dehydration. So, I previously tell that when the renal function is shut down due to the late feature of the dehydration. Prolonged vomiting may cause a loss of hydrochloric acid and produce an increased bicarbonate in the plasma to compensate for the chloride. So, developed hypokalemic, hypochloremic metabolic alkalosis. Alkalosis shift the intracellular potassium to the extracellular compartment. Initially, the potassium level increase. So, here what happened? At first, previous vomiting, again I tell you for remembering and recapitulating, repeated vomiting, the hydrochloric acid is expelled out. That's why chloride is decreased and bicarbonate N increased. So, metabolic alkalosis develop. Due to the metabolic alkalosis develop, so losses of the sodium and losses of the chloride. With continued vomiting, renal excretion of potassium increases because the sudden increase of the potassium is increases loss in the urinary system. Why? To preserve the potassium. That's why also potassium decrease. The adrenocortical response to hypovolemia insuffices the exchange of potassium for sodium at the distal tubule, which suggests subsequent aggression of the hypokalemia. So, here develop the hypokalemia, hypochloremia, and metabolic alkalosis. What happened next? And what are the electrolyte changes in the pyloric stenosis? The electrolyte change in the pyloric stenosis, as there is a loss of first sodium, so hyponatremia, potassium, so hypokalemia, magnesium, so hypomagnesemia, hypochloremia, and there is a metabolic alkalosis, and lastly the paradoxical aciduria. I also tell about the mechanism of the paradoxical aciduria later on. So these are the electrolyte abnormality developed in the pyloric stenosis. That means the hyponatremia, hypokalemia, hypomagnesemia, hypochloremia, metabolic alkalosis, and paradoxical aciduria. So these are electrolyte abnormality developed in the pyloric stenosis. Now how paradoxical aciduria develop? Again, initially the urine has low chloride and bicarbonate content, reflecting the primary metabolic abnormality. This bicarbonate is excreted along with the sodium, and so with the time the patient become progressively hyponatremic and more profoundly dehydrated. Because of dehydration, a phase of sodium retention follows and potassium and hydrogen are excreted in preference. Because the sodium is very important for the function of the body in a various system. That's why for the preservation of the sodium, potassium and hydrogen is excreted. This result in the urine become paradoxically acidic. So paradoxical aciduria is developed. So this is the mechanism of the how electrolyte abnormality or metabolic alkalosis develop the paradoxical aciduria. That means for the repeated vomiting, sodium, potassium, everything is lost. To preserve the sodium and potassium, potassium and hydrogen is excreted through the urine. That's why aciduria developed. So it is developed as a metabolic alkalosis with a paradoxical aciduria. Now, what are the clinical features of paradoxical aciduria? The clinical features of paradoxical aciduria are irritability, confused status, dehydration, often convulsion may be occur, and features of alkalosis like rapid breathing, sinus stroke breathing. And if we investigate about the serum electrolyte, arterial blood gas analysis, serum calcium level, etc., then we diagnosed it is a paradoxical aciduria. So double strength normal saline, IV potassium under ECG monitoring plus IV magnesium can be given. একটু ধীরে ধীরে হয়ে যাচ্ছে না? তাহলে স্লাইড আসার পরে যাই। কথা বলো স্যার ক্লাস। Dear student, as the server is due to the rain, heavy rain here, the server is slow. That's why proceed slowly. Now the pathophysiology of the gastric tetany. For it is only for the not only it is for the those students are carry the good mark or the postgraduate student. What are the write short note on gastric tetany or what are the pathophysiology of the gastric tetany? Metabolic effects occurs vomiting of hydrochloric acid, hypochloremic alkalosis develop, progression of dehydration, metabolic abnormalities related to the renal function. So the bicarbonate excreted along with the sodium, hyponatremia and profound hypodehydration again develop. Sodium retention with potassium hydrogen excretion. Urine is acidic now, and metabolic alkalosis and hypokalemia develop. Due to the hypokalemia, the increased ionized calcium into the blood, decreased ionized calcium, so hypocalcemia develop. So tetany developed in the due to the pyloric stenosis. So it is the gastric tetany. Now we go for summary. So, dear student, some of the question here may occur. What is the gastric tetany? What is the consequence of the metabolic abnormality in the pyloric stenosis? And how the pyloric stenosis present and what is the difference between the pyloric stenosis in benign gastric outlet obstruction and malignant gastric outlet obstruction? This may be the question of pyloric stenosis. I tell you the one question, it is for you, and you give me the answer in the inbox. What is the metabolic consequences differences? Metabolic consequence of differences in gastric outlet obstruction by the pyloric stenosis or by the carcinoma stomach. What is the main difference between the metabolic consequences of difference between the pyloric stenosis and the carcinoma stomach? So you just tell me the answer in inbox, or I will tell you the answer next class. Now the summary. Gastric outlet obstruction is most commonly associated with the long-standing peptic ulcer disease and gastric cancer. The metabolic abnormality of hypochloremic alkalosis is usually only seen with peptic ulcer disease and should be treated with isotonic saline with potassium supplementation. Endoscopy is essential, and if any lesion, endoscopic biopsy is essential for the tools of the investigation. In the early cases, endoscopic dilatation may be done, but in our subcontinent or in our country, it is not done in the endoscopic dilatation of the adult pyloric stenosis. So, if patient develop pyloric stenosis due to benign cases, that means gastric outlet obstruction due to pyloric stenosis, the surgery is the mainstay of treatment of this patient. So this is the summary of the all about the pyloric stenosis, both the clinical presentation and the theory discussion. If any query or if any question, please put me. I will discuss about the next class. Now for the student, I have gone through there may be some written question from the stomach, both from all other disease of the stomach, pyloric stenosis, carcinoma stomach, and all other disease. Just you in the home, just practice the broad question of the stomach. I give you the question. Number 1. A patient with long periodic gastric pain develop projectile vomiting after meal. Again I tell you, a patient with long periodic gastric pain develop projectile vomiting after meal. What will be the expected finding on inspection and palpation? How image helps in diagnosis? And what are the expected biochemical abnormalities? Next question. A 60 years man presented with features of gastric outlet obstruction with anemia. What is your provisional diagnosis? What clinical examination you want to perform in the abdomen for your diagnosis? How can prepare stomach prior to surgery in such case? So you write now the two question, and again I put you the another question. Okay. Now the number 3. A 12 kg male baby of 3 weeks presented with projectile vomiting, dehydration, Probably palpable epigastric like mass. What is your provisional diagnosis and how will you confirm it? How will you estimate the daily fluid requirement? Mention the surgical treatment. Next question is, a 40 years old man presented with vomiting after taking meal for 1 month. What is your diagnosis? What types of fluid and electrolyte disturbance you expect from such case, and what investigation you will suggest for such patient? You write it down. Next, the what do you mean by early gastric cancer and advanced gastric cancer? A 60 years old patient complains of recent weakness, anorexia and weight loss. What are the probable diagnoses? How will you evaluate the patients, and what is early gastric cancer? So these 6 are the broad question I gave you, and you will answer and practice the answer in home. Now the MCQ question. I also give you the 5 MCQ question. If you does not find any answer, then I'll give the answer in the next class. Regarding peptic ulcer disease, the term peptic ulcer is a misnomer. Patient with gastric ulceration have increased level of gastric acid production. Kissing ulcer refers to adjacent gastric and duodenal ulcer. There is a greater association between gastric ulcer and malignancy than duodenal ulcer. All peptic ulcer can be helped by using proton pump inhibitors. This is the first question. So the second questions are, which of the following are pre-malignant condition of gastric cancer? हमने तो उधर कैसे पढ़े देखा जाए शो करके. A. Helicobacter pylori infection. B. Gastric atrophy. Pernicious anemia with previous gastric surgery, and smoking. These are the 5 questions. Which of the following are pre-malignant? Now the sorry again for technical faulty. There is a server down. Again I go for slowly. So the second question is, which of the following are pre-malignant condition of the gastric cancer? Helicobacter pylori infection, gastric atrophy, pernicious anemia, previous gastric surgery, smoking. Number 3. Let's say common sites for peptic ulcer included: first part of the duodenum, fundus of stomach, esophagus, jejunum such as stomal ulcer after gastric surgery, and Meckel's diverticulum. Server is again slow now. Number 4. Which of the following are true in respect of gastric outlet obstruction? Number 2 শো করতেছে, 4 এ চলে আসলাম তো। Which of the following are true in respect of gastric outlet obstruction? It is most commonly associated with the long-standing periodic peptic ulcer disease and gastric cancer. The usual metabolic abnormality is hypochloremic alkalosis. Endoscopy has no role in the management of this disease. Surgery is the mainstay of the treatment, and the hypokalemia may occur due to paroxysmal renal aciduria. This is the number 4 question. So the number 5 question number 5s are, so you just write it down and practice in your home, and it is absolutely belly lab oriented. If you go through the belly and lab, then you find every answer of these of the all sorts of MCQ. So I think you go through the belly and lab. The anatomy of the stomachs and duodenum are just give one question for the anatomy of the stomach and duodenum. Number one is or A, the right gastric artery is a branch of celiac artery. B, vagal fibers to the stomach are apparent. C, the parietal cells are in the body of the stomach are the acid secreting cell. D, the venous drainage of the stomach ends in the inferior vena cava. E, the chief cells are secret pepsinogen. So these five are the answer, a question of the MCQ. So I request every student, both undergraduate and postgraduate, please practice the all broad question and practice and find the answer of the all of the MCQ. Just I give you the 5 MCQ question, and if you cannot find any answer, or if any discussion about the SAQ or written question, I'll discuss later on in the class. My next class is the Tuesday 11:30. We'll again meet with the live discussion with the large gap. I also discussion about the from the colon large gap, cecum, ascending, descending, then transverse, sigmoid, rectum, whole of the. I start the elementary tract, then go hepatobiliary, etc. Everything later on. And after every chapter, I'll give you the some question and the MCQ. So thank you very much, and again meet on next Tuesday 11:30 a.m. Thank you very much, dear student. এমনকি স্টপ পাচ্ছি না।